Well, welcome everybody to this wonderful episode that is being hosted on Easter Sunday. So I hope you're having a wonderful Easter Sunday where we get to celebrate the resurrection of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ while also watching these teens who don't get resurrected after they die. Sorry, I did kind of like set up the baseball or the ball and then hit it or whacked out of the way. I know you were like, "Ooh, spiritual." Oh, wait a minute. But yeah, we get this whole kickoff of watching Scream that honestly debuted these whole parodies of horror films within horror films. So it was really a enjoyable moment to just watch and see all the things that I had already been discussing throughout all the episodes of season 1 as well as season 2, like the episodes that we've had already in season 2, and be able to see that like Scream was one of the original ones that realized that there was this type of agenda or type of story scenarios and rules to surviving horror films that just somehow are being applied to all these other movies. And they just, whoever wrote this, and they really thought it through and said, we're going to make this a movie where they discuss these rules and talk about it and talk about all these other wonderful horror films, and then realize that they are now caught inside their own horror film or their own horror movie, and then they have to try to survive that. And I thought it was just really great to see how they were able to joke amongst each other or joke amongst the same genre and still keep the same type of horror and thriller that comes with the genre. It was really fun, and it was actually very predictable. I'm not gonna say that the writing wasn't good. I think I watched Scary Movie before I even watched this one. This is actually the first time I've actually watched Scream. I knew Scary Movie, which is like a parody or a comedy of this movie, kind of really based really close to it. So when I watched this movie, I kind of expected it to be similar-ish, but not too goofy like Scary Movie was. So watching this movie, I just kind of started looking at the conversations they would have amongst each other, the looks, and like really caught on quick. I normally don't. Like when I watch movies, I'm normally like, oh, maybe it's this person, maybe it's this. I've gotten a little bit better. But this one, it got really obvious at the beginning. But we will start discussing that. I'm not going to cut through it. So let's go ahead and start, and let's hit that theme song. All right, so I wanted to make a clarification when it came to watching this Scream. This is the 1996 original first Scream. Now, I think the other ones end up being sequels. There's a lot of sequels. I think there ends up being, well, I don't think too much. I think there's like a Scream 2, Scream 3, and then they did a couple like MTV shows of Scream, and then finally they did Scream 4. Yeah, Scream 6 and Scream 4. So I think there's around 6. I don't know. I'm just looking really quick on Google here. But I know this was the original one that came out. So I'm not going to be talking about the one that is the TV show. We'll get to that when we get to it. But this one is the original one where we get Drew Barrymore debuting as her now more adult actor, and very great debut. Really, it was good. I just thought it was kind of interesting because this talks about the horror films, like when she's talking to this stranger on the phone, is they talk about like, oh, you like this killer who goes after babysitters, right? but I don't think she was babysitting. I think she was just home alone, which is a lot of the stereotypical scenario when it comes to killing the first victim. She's always alone. She's either babysitting, the kids are asleep. She's in a vulnerable state. So it already started off with the basis of a normal horror film, talking about horror films. I thought that's where I thought it was really cool because they're like, "What's your favorite horror film?" And she starts talking about like Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger and Michael Myers. So it was really cool to see that they were kind of giving like a ode to these movies that started off the slasher genre in horror films. And it ended up obviously going south, unfortunately for her, because they just wanted to kill. Now, my big question with this was that I feel like these kills were very personal. And it looks like another like movie of seeking revenge, right? We're looking at someone who particularly chose this girl and the boyfriend to kind of give the beginnings of killing, and we never find out why them. Like we find out why we get the main girl. I think it's not Sydney. Sydney, yeah, it is Sydney. Sorry, but we get Sydney, who's the main chick, and we understand that her past and then why the killer's after her. But we never got to the point why the killer was after Drew Barrymore's character or the boyfriend. And when we find out who the killers were, I believe there could have been like jealousy. I feel like they had nothing to do with Sydney's case per se. So I don't know. I just thought they just wanted to kill because it was a year and they just needed to kill, and they just chose a couple that was kind of showing off their popularity at school. I don't know. But anyway, they got chosen and they got murdered very, very brutally, and hung up actually in a tree for her parents to find. So I thought that was very dramatic, or not dramatic, but traumatic for the parents. But now that's the opening. So off the get-go, wonderful opening. However, I did when she was running around, I remember she was cooking her popcorn, and she just let it burn. Like it was on fire, and she'd rather grab a knife and get out of the house than like cause the fire not to burn the rest of the house. Like I don't know. Like if she would have survived, it would have burned the whole house, and then it would have been like, "Oh, sorry, Mom, I was running from an inanimate object or person who thought it was going to kill me and didn't, but sorry, I burned down the house." Like I don't know if that would have been the conversation they would have had after, but she didn't make it to that. She died. So we're just gonna leave it to that. And so now we get this whole setting where we have Sydney, who had a also traumatic experience with her mother dying a year after this. No, yeah, a year ago. So a year past, or whatever. I don't know how do you really say it, but her mother died a year ago, according to when these murders happened. So when the reporters are coming and talking about like, wow, this is like the biggest thing we've ever seen since, and then they kind of just like blank out, it's because Cindy's mom was one who got raped and murdered the last time the city or town had something big happen. And so now everybody's kind of just talking about like this murder, and reporters are all in the high school trying to figure it out. I love that Henry Winkler, the Fonz, was the principal, and he was like straight to the point. Don't let anything happen. We are going to get to the bottom of this. We want everything to be safe for everybody. So I love that he was actually a pretty good, straight to the point principal. And I'm always glad to see him. He's a phenomenal actor. Okay, and so then when they're talking amongst each other, Billy gives Shaggy, sorry, not Shaggy, but Stu, a look like stop explaining things, like stop going into detail on how you gut someone and all this and that. And that's where I was like, yep, it's them. Them two, they're the killers, right? Just the way they both interacted and discussed it was very simple to be like, nah, y'all are the killers. One, because you guys are just too excited about what happened, and two, it's just the way you were able to explain it. Like it was just too much of a clue for me to be like, that's it. And maybe the writer wanted that. Maybe the writer wanted all of us to be like, oh, it's them, because that's exactly what they kind of wanted to do, parry it off of stuff. So I don't know, but I caught it quick. And if you didn't, well, if you watched the movie, you figured out that it was them, right? But now, what I loved about this is that it went directly to it, because it was like what the Drew Barrymore and the boyfriend were killed. Let's say a Tuesday. Come Wednesday, everybody is going to school, figuring out that happened, and then like come that night, the killer's already going to Sydney. So like it was straight to the point, which I kind of liked. And so now we have her thinking that it's her boyfriend Billy, which we all know it was, but obviously they were able to kind of mask it when he gets caught. And so now she's not trusting him. He's acting a lot more stranger, like very, very like how to like controlling or narcissistic. I feel like it was just one of those, like he was just I don't know, like once after he got caught, the way he like started acting, I was like, yeah, he's definitely the killer. Like he has too much of the charisma to be someone who would really kill. And then now they have the cops taking care of Sydney, because she almost got killed from the killer already. And so because it almost happened, they end up creating a curfew, right? And that curfew, like they stopped school, like school's done for the rest of the year. So I think they were pretty close to summer, because I highly doubt a school and or the district would be like, yep, we're done with school for the rest of the year. So let's say they were like a couple of weeks away from ending the school year. And what do teens do best when they cancel school and put a curfew? Hey, let's throw a party. I kind of thought that was dumb. It's not that it's dumb, but I feel like wouldn't the cops be more strict if they did put the curfew in and they hear there's a party? Wouldn't they be like, yeah, let's stop that party because we put a curfew? But they didn't. Like even the chief sent Dewey or Huey or whatever, but Dewey into. He said, hey, protect Sydney, make sure she doesn't get in harm's way, and had him drive her to the party. So, so why would the cops enforce a curfew, but like add the curfew, but not enforce it? That made no sense to me. And again, maybe it's a parody of that, because maybe cops in the other movies, and we're gonna get into the slasher ones because they're always happening within spring, summer. But if I know for a fact, I think they really didn't enforce much of the stuff. They would tell everybody like, get inside, but if people were sneaking out, they were just like, oh, you bunch of ratty kids. For me, I just thought it was just like, it was strictly, here's the curfew. Everybody talked about the party. Even the chief knew there was a party, and he's just like, hey, let's just make sure that Sydney's safe. Let's send a deputy to keep everybody in line. But we're not going to, it's a far off location. We won't get there in time. So, I don't know. I think they just set it up to be like, well, we don't care if they die. Right? Right? These cops really didn't care. They're just like, well, our hands are full. And even though she's probably need more than one police officer to protect her. We're just gonna send one who's just a deputy, who's new, who nobody really listens to. He'll be the one. And so that's how it was. That's how it ended up being. So now they're getting ready for a party. But I noticed one thing before our principal ends up dying is that when he's walking out of the school because someone keeps knocking on his door, you look at the janitor, and the janitor is wearing like not like a Halloween costume, but like his sweater and his pants and all that stuff is exactly Freddy Krueger's. So again, kudos to the people who did like the whole set for this, because that was pretty cool. That was like, hey, Freddy Krueger, you talked about it. And then they mentioned like, well, what movies do you like? And people, and they said Wes Carpenter, which is a combination of both Wes Craven and John Carpenter. Really great horror film directors who have done phenomenal stuff like Halloween and Freddy Krueger. So it was really cool that they kind of gave, again, like a good appreciation to these really great writers or directors of horror films that kind of made Ghostface or this movie become famous. Now they end up finding out that all the numbers is coming from the dad. Like all the calls were coming from the dad's phone, and so could the father be the possible killer, right? And this was back in '96. So I don't know that we had a lot of knowledge that a cell phone could be copied. So the fact that these teens knew it's because, one, they kind of like grew up watching these technology stuff and how it were invented. They probably were able to figure out how to mask it later on, but I'm not sure how much. Like, well, give it, Billy was a rich kid, so I think he had the resources to find out and figure out. Plus Stu, who is Shaggy, I call him Shaggy anywhere I see him. But Stu ends up discussing that they knew through all these horror films they watched how to frame someone else, how to get away with it, and how to make it look like they're her, and so on and so forth. So like he does discuss that later on, and so I think that's just kind of how they were able to be like, okay, well, we need to figure out how to mask a phone, and especially these phones that I don't know, they were barely coming out. So I think they were able to find it, but they masked it. But that's also one of the things that you got to think about. A lot of people, when it comes to killers, they always, one, you always have to suspect the people that are closest, right? It's always the one thing that you're gonna suspect, and at times it could be the person who lost the significant other and they just snapped, and it's the year anniversary, and they're gonna go on a killing spree because it's the one thing that's, that's how they get through their mourning, period. And that's kind of how we saw with like My Bloody Valentine, is that we had the killer after somewhat, how many years, 20 years, come back to kill everybody because they were going to have a Valentine's party. Yes, it was very cheesy, and of course, like, the ending was just terrible. but that's kind of how they were basing it off, right? They saw what the facts were. The dad was the one or the cell phone of the dad was the one calling, and they were it was just all adding up. So that's why they had the dad there. But just always know that's kind of the rule. When something like this happens, they're always going to look at the ones closest to you as suspects, because mainly, unfortunately, here in the U.S., it's always been someone closest that has been the person who's done it. And then the one thing that I kind of went on a whole crazy scheme last time, but never trust reporters ever. Right? We get that. Courtney Cox is a reporter in this movie, and she's just trying to find any story for her to be big, which you normally see with all reporters, and nothing, I don't know, anything they say can and will not be really true. It's just they're gonna fluctuate it the way they want it, and that's how it is now. We don't know what story is true, what is really out there, and again, we hit the conspiracy theories. We hear all this stuff, right? I'm not gonna get into that. We kind of talked about it last time, but yeah, never trust reporters. I just they're bien chismosas, right? They're always trying to get in people's face and get the story, and I hate that. And chismosas is like very nosy for anybody who doesn't know Spanish. All right. And one of the things that I loved about it, again, they talk about, because they did bring up Michael Myers and they brought up Halloween. And so they talk about how Jamie Lee Curtis is like the horror queen, which is 100% true. She honestly really made the slasher movies be great in the 80s and all the stuff that she made. So I thought it was cool, again, that we were throwing respect to these great actors that really brought out these movies that are well known now in the horror genre. Now, I did have a question, and this comes with physics, this comes with engineering. The friend gets caught inside the cat door in the garage. The killer, hits the garage button, and she gets lifted up and then gets smashed. Would that really happen? Like, I feel like the doors are like have a specific weight limit, and I know she's light, but I don't feel like it would have smashed her. Sorry. If you are someone who was like watching this and saw that happen, be like, yeah, that's possible, because there's no way to stop it. It's just gonna keep going up, and it'll just kind of like still kind of just smash her in because it has to get in there. Then great, I'll understand it. Yay, physics, right? That's exactly what it is. But if that's not true, then yeah, they really exaggerated that part. I don't know. I felt like it's something that's not possible, but I haven't seen anybody break that myth per se. Like, like Mythbusters came and said, could this really happen? I haven't seen anybody do that. So I just thought it was really funny that she just got stuck and then squeezed to death. So the guy really didn't have to do much, just wait for her to go in the door and be like, okay, good. Now I'm done. But that's again where it became suspicious, because the boyfriend didn't look for her at all. Like, she just she was gone to get him a beer, and then all of a sudden he's like, I don't know, she may be mad at me, and I'm like, yeah, again, you're the killer. You probably were the one in the room. Like, you're the one who hit the button to kill her, and of course killing loose ends so that way you guys can get Sydney, because that's just the main goal, was to get Sydney anyway. And then we get Jamie Kennedy, which is, I guess, the horror fanatic in the whole movie. And he's like the expert per se. And we always talk about how the expert always dies in every one of these scenarios where it's like, I have survived thousands of things, or I know how to get out of this escape room, and I've been doing these games for years and years and years, and I know how to do this. And they're always like the first ones to die. Somehow the novice, the person who doesn't know anything, survives. Not sure why that's always the case. But in this one, he's like that one person who knows all the stuff about horror films. Kind of what we had discussed. He always says, like, the only person that survives or can outlive in any horror film is the virgin. Exactly what we have spoken about. The whole agenda of this, if you have sex, you're going to die. And that's exactly just what it was. Jamie Lee Curtis in all the Halloween movies was the only one that really didn't have any premarital sex, and that's the reason why she was the survivor. Not probably the reason why, there was a lot more stuff that made her the protagonist of the story, but it's kind of the gist of it, right? So he talks about that. Then he talks about the actual rules in surviving a horror film. Like, 1, again, never have sex. 2, never drink or do drugs, because again, whenever that is incorporated, the youth end up always dying. And 3, never under any circumstance say, I'll be right back. Which is just kind of just the name thing, the normal stuff of someone saying, hey guys, let's split up, I'll be right back. And then you end up finding them dead or hung up or already murdered, right? So it was really funny how he, like, at least provided these rules per se how to survive, but everybody was drinking and doing drugs, so like they really didn't care what he was saying, and then they just all sat down to watch a horror film while all this other stuff was happening. And so then that was it. No one even noticed that anybody had died. Really, like I think everybody left the party just like normal. Like, well, the party's done, we're leaving, and then the other people were all drunk and realized that the principal got murdered, and so they wanted to go see him. So it just kind of like whittled down. Nobody noticed. Hey, there's a garage door open. Oh my gosh, there's a girl there. Again, it just kind of like slipped through everybody's mind. And then we get that Billy gets stabbed, right? Like, oh no, the killer's here. And then I know for a fact it was all fake. Not because I've seen that part of it before, but it's mainly because I already expected him to be the killer. So there had to be a way to kind of convince Sydney that it's not him to then make the reveal at the end. So I saw that one coming. And then what I thought was funny was when Jamie Kennedy was sitting there going like, Jamie, you can do this. Jamie, she's right behind you. Jamie, right behind you. It was funny that they added that because one, like he was talking to Jamie Lee Curtis in the movie, but his name is also Jamie. So it was like, and the killer was right behind him. So I thought that was like a really cool scenario where it was like, dude, you're talking to yourself. It's right behind you. Like, look. And then he ended up always being the jokester, right? Because he gets shot, but then he like somehow lives, and he's like, well, and he's like, I'm glad to be a virgin this time. Because again, the same thing, you know, right? The virgins don't die. So I thought that was very funny that he really kept to that stereotypical horror film genre stuff. And then we get the poor camera guy who's watching all this, trying to find a story, get killed. And I felt bad for him. Like, I think it was just out of the circumstance. But again, when it comes to horror films, or when it comes to any scenario like this, there's always loose ends. And whoever the killer is, the killer's always going to kill whoever's in the way of whoever they got to kill. So, yeah, he was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. And now we're stuck with now knowing that Billy and Stu are the killers. And Cotton Weary was framed by both of them. And this is where they kind of go into detail of how they got through with it. But before I go into that, let's go ahead and take a little break, and then we'll be right back. Season 2 has already kicked off. Have you gotten your shirt? Not yet? Head to Etsy and search for Gio's Thoughts to purchase a one-of-a-kind horror films Thrill Me shirt. We have all sizes for both men and women. A link will be provided on this episode's details. Want to support Gio in a different way? Head to geosthoughts.com and click on Support Creator. Any contribution would be greatly appreciated. All right, and we're back. All right, so this is where we get now finally Stu and Billy to discuss their motives, per se. And we talk about, again, that there always is a motive behind the killing. And they even talk about, like, oh, you want a motive? You really want a motive? There doesn't have to be a motive. But there's always a motive. There's always a reason why someone gets killed, you know? We talk about when we're going to look at the beginnings of most of the slasher movie killings, there's always a reason why the killing actually happens. The killer is out for revenge. The majority of the time, that's always the motive. The other times, it's because they have unfinished business, and so they have to just get it completed. So there's always a motive, and then we end up finding out, like, the real motive was that this poor little boy crying his eyes out because his parents got divorced, and it was because the dad was sleeping with Sydney's mom. And so he blames, Sydney's mom, and he was, so they end up killing her the year prior because it was her fault, and then now they're coming after Sydney because why not, right? And I was just like, oh, poor little guy. Oh no, he has to blame. Oh, like my parents are getting divorced. And I thought it was just like, oh, you gotta be kidding me, man. Like, my parents got divorced. They've had their own stuff, but I wasn't scarred. Maybe it's just like a white people thing that people do that they just get so like, oh no, it was because of their fault and they were after this, while the rest of us Latinos and other cultures are just like, yeah, well, tough. Yeah, we're gonna get through it. Whatever. They split up. We got it. We had to survive somehow. I don't know. I just feel like it was too low of a motive for me to be like, okay, so I get killing her because you felt like it, but why would you go after the daughter? Like, the daughter, you didn't even know it was you. You framed perfectly this other dude, and yet you're like, I am going to infiltrate this and then kill her. So I don't know if the motive really follows. This kind of follows the story of Valentine, right? Because since Sydney didn't know who the killer was, same like in Valentine, they really never saw the kid they bullied after junior high. So they didn't really know how he looked, right? But in this one, and so in both occasions, the one who is getting chased or getting killed is dating the person who is, well, with Scream is the killer. With Valentine, could be the killer. Remember, we left that kind of like at a, could it be her or could it be him? Could it be the girl that they actually got? We don't know, right? It's all up in our mind. So I feel like they both kind of went straight to each other, where it was like the motive of the people were that they were going to get back at the person who hurt them the most. And even though in Scream, even though Billy and Stu ended up killing the mom later on, they wanted to then complete it all. And I don't know. In the end, I thought it was kind of funny that to get away with all this, they're like, we're also gonna get hurt. Your dad's gonna hurt us, but we somehow survive. So then they started stabbing each other, but they ended up stabbing each other like super deep. So you get them like both getting weaker, stabbing each other, and I was just like, okay, that's how you know when these like kids think that they could do something like this, and it ends up not working out, because in the end it just didn't work out. They were able to get caught, which was great, and then that's how we ended off. And I yelled at the end when they were waiting for like Billy to either do his last little scare before the end, and then she just shoots him right in the head. And I was yelling like, headshot, like shoot him already in the head, make sure he's dead, and then she shoots him right in the head. So I was like, perfect, like, there you go. But now we're gonna get all these other screams that there's another killer. So the killer always continues. But what I love about Scream is that it's a different killer every time. That's kind of following just suit of, we're going to kill, we have this Halloween costume or whatever, and we're going to just use this. It's not based on these other slasher movies where like Jason Voorhees is like comes back to life and then he's like a unkillable being. He'll always return. Same with Freddy Krueger. Michael Myers is almost about the same way. Like and they even brought back Michael Myers. Like they did 2 newer, or I think 3 newer Halloweens, and somehow he doesn't die, but he's human, but he doesn't die. Jason is reincarnated into evil. Freddy Krueger comes through our dreams, so he as well dies or gets killed and then comes back. So obviously Dark Powers brought him back. So there's all that stuff. But like, at least with Scream, we know it's not the same guy coming over and over and over and over again. It's just more like, okay, our still goal is we're gonna go after this person. here's the suit that I guess everybody had accessible to them, and then we're just gonna use that, and then bam, right? So at least we'll be able to see that at least the continuity of the other shows or of the other movies, like the characters stay the same. The actors all stay the same, which I really appreciate that they worked hard to do that. I know the MTV changes all that stuff, but I think once we get to it, we'll see how the story really goes. But as for the other ones, I know almost everyone stays around the same concept or same character, same concept of who's the main character, who's the killer's after, and so we at least have some continuity. This is not. This is definitely not like Leprechaun, where all four movies had nothing to do with the one prior. It had nothing to do with even any folklore or lore of leprechauns, and yeah, it's not as ridiculous. It's at least sticks to the same kind of parody comedy stuff, but now in a way of becoming a slasher, and that's how Ghostface is introduced to the slasher genre. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. It was really fun to watch and see how they end up making it to the end and how they leave it off, right? They leave it like if it's a happy ending, but then you kind of see like flashes of Ghostface, so like, oh, he's coming back, which I kind of guessed it because since this other dude is serving time for being framed, right? They end up finding out that I bet he ends up finding out that he gets released, and I bet he probably goes on a killing spree. Again, I haven't really seen all the streams, so that's my guess for number 2. Are we watching it next week? No, we are not. So if you're thinking, oh, we're gonna watch it next week, no, we're not. We're continuing on with what I have. I will plan it out come season 3. But we are watching Carrie, the original one. So again, we're kind of sticking to kind of like a high schoolish, right? The Faculty, Scream, Carrie, Urban Legend is kind of it's schoolish. I think they're in the university, but it's still school. Prom Night, Summer of '84, so on and so forth. Yeah, so we're just sticking to these genres that occur in summer, where the sun is out later and people are traveling more, and that's where you kind of get into it, right? And plus, the bullying of high school that leads to death, which is just exactly how these movies turn out to be. So, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next week.